Welcome to the Scannell Agenda. Today's show, Tough Row to Hoe. Today's date is June 6th, 2017. And what is meant by a tough row, R-O-W, to hoe is, I think it's an old expression used by gardeners. And in those days, in the old days, farmers, if you had a tough row, maybe it was weedy or rocky, or tough for one reason or another, but you had to get out there and get the job done. So that's where that expression came from, I believe, a tough row to hoe. I got a nice antique hoe here. And this is the antique. Well, I don't know if it's an antique. It's got cement all over it. And it's probably done its share of work. I can tell it has by the wear on it. And it's a nice length on the pole. Maybe I'll weed pull. Maybe not. Okay. It's the tough row to hoe. That refers, for today's show, to being an activist, such as I am, somewhat of a small, low-level activist, fisherman activist. I was watching a show on PBS about the Flint, Michigan water scandal. It's a national scandal and a national embarrassment. And the main obstacle there was that basically the establishment players were minimizing and discrediting and going against the activists who were simply trying to bring, some clarity to the water situation. Literally and figuratively, you might say. So that story, I watched that. My wife was busy doing housework, and I was watching that. And, boy, I kept saying to myself, boy, these are the people with credibility, and they're getting smashed. And here I am, just a low-level fisherman. If you can smash those guys, I mean, it's easy to smash me, as a point taken, I guess, because I'm basically an uneducated non-entity, just a fisherman, low-level activist. That seems to be the current theme these days in the year 2017. But, however, Donald Trump has been elected, so I think some of the chicanery is being unveiled, I hope. And hopefully we're through with these, how would I call this now? The presidential people who are basically towing the line for the oligarchy or the big money people and those interests there. And you got your pick A and B. Which one do you want, So the activist would be someone like me working on fisheries, aquaculture, or someone like the experts working on the Flint water system. Different levels of activism, but still. It's tough being an activist. I just wanted to say that as an activist, please help. And the last show I did, show number 64, was Help Wanted. That was the name of that show. Help Wanted for this activist to get some of these works that I've done up and in a form where we can follow along, we can all follow along with, let's say, even my notes today. That hoe was rusty. But the notes today, So the Scannell Agenda is all about greening the earth and sea. And I'll read something here that I had posted on show number 62. And it says here, carbon will kill us if we're not alert. We are operating with a hamstrung American democracy, and worldwide too, I believe. Just as important as global warming is, so too is our need to take on the oligarchy and fix the democratic system, representation, equity, practicalities, etc. The job of the Scannell agenda is to green the earth and sea, and to fix the housekeeping we need to fix. We can do this. So that is the case I'm making for the activist right here. That's myself. I need some support. Water systems, I want to nationalize as an activist. That's one of my projects, to nationalize the water system. Now, how can you say that? Well, that's a foreign thing. Well, not to me, because I designed the TRIPE system, which is track pipe. It's a monorail system or a wide gauge rail system. And TRIPE gives us the plumbing, and the wind and waves give us the horsepower. You harness the wind and your wave, you put them in the pipe in the form of compressed air, oxygen-rich compressed air, and hydrogen. Those are the three green fuels of the future. We can only green the earth and sea using practical machinery. We can't do it using the petrochemical world that we've had alone. Everything can be used, though. So anyway, they ganged up on the activists, and this work is important. Don't let them gang up on me, them being the establishment co-conspirators who poison the water in Flint. These are the same types that I'm up against. So water and fisheries, they both take, they both are in the category of the green economy. They're in the category especially of the blue economy. So if you have any doubts about whether or not we can power the world with the wind and waves, even if we didn't have solar, solar is definitely a key for things like lighting. But for refrigeration and air conditioning, things like wind and wave power can be used in the form of compressed air to run the machines that can heat your home using the heat pumps, etc., and the refrigeration. Refrigeration simply turns electricity into mechanical energy that compresses gases. Well, you can do the same thing with compressed air too. Now, a couple of years ago, I think it was, I read a book called The Western Ocean Packets by Basil Lubbock. And this is the book. In 1925, published by Charles E. Laureate Company, Boston. And it's a great book. Goes into Captain Samuels of the Dreadnought. And I also read another classic, too, about Joshua Slocum sailing alone around the world. This conclusion in this book, I'll just read part of it. The packet ships have passed away with their steel-nerved skippers, bucko mates, and devil-may-care crews. The Western Ocean traveler is no more. Sail has given way to steam and petrol. The art of seacraft to the cunning of machinery. The virility of a hard life to the comfort of a soft life. And are we the better for it? Is this the right way of civilization and progress, or will this complex, mechanically ridden world have to return to the simpler, more robust life after some cataclysm which will shatter machine-made force, or some scientific discovery in the realms of electricity and magnetism which will drive the steam engine and its coal stack, the combustion engine and its oil can into the scrap heap. Again, this is 1925. Let us hope it may be so, and that the arm which pulls a lever may once more grow muscle in fisting a sail. And the hand that turns a wheel or sets a pointer may regain its grip on the handle of a plow and the round of a rope, and its touch on the driving rein and the tiller. We should all be the fitter, the happier and better, if we could return to the wide horizons of land and sea, to nature and the simple life, and face away from the foul-aired towns and soul-destroying factories. So that's the conclusion of a book, which is part of the lamentations regarding the end of sail and the introduction of steam. So, you know, and it gets into some good stuff. If you could find the book, I'd recommend you read it. This is The Dreadnought off Sandy Hook, 19 Days from Liverpool. Amazing stories. Anyway, a tough row to hoe will be to turn ourselves around and to go with wind and wave energy. And to be brave, we have to go with the wind and wave energy and the solar energy. And we have to green up. So, that's the activist. So, the activist is squeaking and crying for some help here, because I am being put upon, and I don't like it. Mostly for your sake. It's embarrassing for me to see no codfish. It's embarrassing for me to see the blue economy getting, fudged. And I did have some help from a guy named Fred Jennings. He was a Harvard economist. And we worked together, him and I. He dubbed the market quota system the value price market quota system. He liked it. He was a Harvard economist. It's about asset management. He understood asset management, and he understood and he critiqued the current fisheries system now, and he did this years ago. Greenpeace contracted with him, and he worked with me. And we did a great job dissecting the problems of the current fisheries system on fish folk, which is essentially fizzled up. A Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, kind of a listserv where there were about 350 people, 250, I'm not sure how many people, worldwide, talking about fisheries issues, that kind of thing. And at the time when my system was being debated years ago, this would have been before 1999, and then afterwards a little bit, I was one of the top posters answering everything that was fielded my way, and I loved it. But as an activist, you find yourself trying to push people that can't be pushed. They just can't be moved, They won't be pushed. They're comfortable. And most people are very comfortable. They can't be pushed. Like Cape Codders are not as upset as I am with no herring, no codfish, no scallops. It just seems like you can't be pushed. There's nothing that's going to push you. And that's not good. It's not good. So here we have something along the lines of an op-ed editorial. And I'm going to read this and go through it. I may have to continue it because this show's only a half an hour. And it's the My View, Saturday, June 3rd, 2017, Cape Cod Times, op-ed piece by Sheriff James M. Cummings. He's the sheriff of Barnstable County here on Cape Cod, which encompasses the towns of Provincetown, Truro, Wellfleet, Eastham, Orleans, Chatham, Brewster and Harwich, Dennis and Yarmouth, Barnstable, or the city of Barnstable, the town of Mashpee, the town of Falmouth, and the towns of Sandwich and Bourne. That's it. That's Cape Cod. That's Barnstable County. And some of that is over the bridge, over on the other side of the canal. Okay, here it is. Jail's not the place for addicts or mentally ill. Maybe it could or should be. That would be my first point. Much has been written lately about criminal justice reform. Such a public dialogue can be productive to ensure justice is being best served. Unfortunately, many of the media accounts and political agendas are overly simplistic and short-sighted without an understanding or appreciation of what our nation's correctional facilities have become. Well, everyone sees from their own perspective, but I see from a perspective, I've been in jail, the Barnstable County House of Correction, not the new one, just the old one. And I've been in there, I think I counted 4 times, 30, 60, 90, and 120 days, all in a row. But the 120 days, they got sick of looking at me and they let me out after 30 days, so it went 30, that was for Sacajah Pond, being an impolite person. They didn't charge me with the wetlands violations. They basically charged me with being impolite to the police, you know. And then 60 days for everything but, you know, the wetlands violations, which I had the state on these cold. I had the state pretty cold on them. So their way of fighting back was to throw me in jail and to just, you know, let me out, null pros the case, that kind of thing. Throw me in jail on the wrong charges. So the activist has a tough row to hoe because people watch this and they can't be pushed, I guess. Americans can't be pushed. That's our problem, and it's big on here on Cape Cod. We have an establishment newspaper, and we've gotten drunk with the prosperity of the past, I think. Okay, besides, here we go again. And this is a fine article written by the sheriff, by the way. I think it's a good, well-written op-ed piece. 10 minutes to go. Thank you, Dave. Besides rehabilitating criminals, our jails, houses of corrections, and prisons are now places where many of our addicts and mentally ill individuals end up. Well, hold the phone. Wait a minute. Why do we constantly combine our addicts and mentally ill? Aren't mentally ill people disabled people? So why don't we include our addicts and quadriplegics? Why don't we do that? We wouldn't do that to quadriplegics, but yet we have a free hand doing that to the legitimately, the wonderful mentally ill people that I know certainly don't deserve this. I wrote this up years ago in a letter to the editor that was in the Barnstable Patriot. And that was one of the first things that I found objectionable about being in this system, you know, the mental illness, mental health system, is that you're constantly referred to and lumped in together with the addicts and the mentally ill. Oh, the addicts and the mentally ill. Sometimes it can be like chocolate and peanut butter, but sometimes it's just a dishonorable thing to do to legitimately disabled people who have legitimate, you know, God-given disabilities, schizophrenia, for instance. Okay, today, in the business of jails and corrections, among the new inmates booked into these facilities are a significant number of detoxing from narcotics and alcohol. Well, what's the problem? Is it a problem that we don't drug test people and they get haywire and go crazy and we're watching? I think that's the problem. See, my solutions are based on, I think, the old style, and I believe in some of the old style things like vagrancy rules and regulations. Of course, they would be tweaked, And I mentioned that on the show before. We need the vagrancy laws back. Now, you go to the doctor every year, at least once a year. If you're in good health, probably, maybe every other year. But you get, with my systems, you'd get drug tested and you'd pay a fine or a fine fee, however you want to look at it, if you've got the marijuana in your bloodstream, the THC. So we can get a handle on this. We really can. But, you know, most of us are libertarian in nature and we don't want to step on people's toes. But, oh my God, the money it's costing society is just absurd. So, well, we don't want to step on, you're stepping on toes of addicts and you're becoming all of a sudden very idealistic. Oh, we don't want to hurt the addict. Well, don't forget the taxpayer has some rights here too. So I say drug testing with drug testing the blood and then taxing the bloodstream for the drugs. All right. In Barnstable, about 40% of newly arriving inmates require some level of medical detox intervention. Whoa. Ching ching, that's a lot of money there. And then they come to Bay Bridge or some other clubhouse, right? After their brain is fried. You know, the fried egg, this is your brain on drugs. And then they are basically illicit drug-induced occupational taking syndrome. That is an acronym, and they're gone, or they're partially gone. They can come back. Correctional officers also face individuals suffering from serious mental illnesses. Okay, they may be separate and they may be very related. Of course, many inmates, those are my words, of course, many inmates also have co-occurring disorders, both an active addiction and a diagnosed mental illness. All right, here, let's pretend. This is just cranberry juice, but, you know, I'm physically drinking this. I know what I'm doing. I'm drinking cranberry juice. It's good. That's why I'm drinking it. It's delicious and it's good. Now, if that were a rum and coke, I would know I'd be on thin ice. I'd better be careful. Not to say I shouldn't have a rum and coke or a Cape Codder, but you got to be careful. According to the reports published, back to the article, in the Journal of the American Medical Association, approximately 50% of the people with severe mental disorders are also affected by substance abuse. Well, hold the phone again here, because I just don't believe we should be doing this to people with a disability. It's just wrong. Now, I'm not saying James Cummings is wrong for doing this, but it's a societal foible, you might say. It's just not politically correct to me. It's incorrect profoundly as a moral code to be constantly doing this to people who are, you know, affected by mental illness, naturally occurring mental illness. So I object for that reason. We must also acknowledge that more than a few incarcerated individuals have not yet been diagnosed and are not included in such statistics. Well, there's a lot of people who want to be diagnosed. That's for sure, right? They want to be diagnosed because it's a red carpet if you get diagnosed. I never wanted to be diagnosed. I was taken prisoner and then diagnosed, and that was an attempted murder. Either that or I have 7 or 8 major mental illnesses, which I claim I'm not mentally ill. It's a sad thing, what we do to the activist. It's really a tough row to hoe for the activist. Throughout the political spectrum is near total agreement that jail is not the ideal place for those suffering from mental illness. So I would say hold it right there, because I disagree with that. Universally, if we agree, you're going to find me disagreeing. Jail, I've always said, is a good place. Now, from my experience at the Barnstable County House of Correction, most of these guards from my earlier days were very good stewards of humanity. They could shepherd you. They could get you back on track. They had what it took. A lot of them did. And then we went south. We went into the state-style prison system, and we moved the prison over there to Bourne. And I just don't think that mixing all these city people from Brockton and New Bedford, 2 minutes, thank you, is a good idea or was a good idea. But jails should and can have clubhouses in them, embedded in them, and I've designed all these systems. And then when you get out of jail, you should also have a job and a bunk waiting for you. In other words, you may not even be getting $3 an hour, but at least you got a job and a bunk, and you can scratch ahead from there, all right? This business of minimum wage, sometimes it just shouldn't apply. It shouldn't apply if you're a prisoner getting out. You should be handed a bunk and a job and a handshake and a little party for you. You're out, and God love you. You got a second chance. You're not in jail forever. You're not getting the chair. So this is a very good article, and we're going to continue it on the next show. And thanks for watching the Scannell Agenda.